Hello guys, and welcome to you in this tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to learn how to design user interfaces using Python. Have you ever heard about Flutter? Well, Flutter is a very famous user interfaces toolkit that was developed by Google to create those wonderful user interfaces seamlessly. Flutter uses a programming language that is called Dart. But did you know that there is an implementation for Flutter for Python, which is called Flet? The Flet library is actually a subset of the Flutter. So it does not contain all the aspects, but it contains most of the cool aspects that will help us create some really cool user interfaces using Python. By the end of this tutorial, you will learn how to create Flet widgets, how to fit them together to create apps. And we won't be following the boring way, we will be actually implementing a project while we are learning those pieces. So let's get started. As usual, the first step is to install the library that we need. In our case, we need to install the library that is called Flet. So I'm going to say pip install Flet. Now let's go. And Flet is installed. Now next, what we need to do is to try to import it to see if everything is okay. So here I'm going to say import Flet. No question mark, and here we go. Okay, so how about we create a very simple application consisting only of a window, and we are going to try to run it on a desktop and on a web. Okay, so I'm going to say here import Flet as ft for short, and then we need to define a function. Now take a look here. I'm going to say diff main, and then I'm going to be passing page ft.page. And here I'm just going to say pass. It's going to be an empty function, and this empty function is taking ft.page. You might be asking, what is this syntax exactly? Here we are passing the parameter page. But when you put this colon in front and you pass anything after it, you are passing a type. It means that this page should be with the type ft.page. Okay? Now this ft library here has a type that is the same type as the page. Alright? So whatever page type is in this ft library, the page we are passing to our main function here should be like this. Now there is something called static analysis, which checks the code for consistency, and it helps third-party tools to make sure that everything is in place when it comes to types. So this static tool will come here and it will check if this page has this type. It does not have to do anything with compilation or interpretation. It has nothing to do with that. It's just the tool that checks the code as it is and check the types and etc. So you can think about this as main being passed, and this is just a check for the static tool if this page has this certain type or not. This is the summarization of it. Okay, now we are going to start the app. I'm going to say ft.app, and here I'm going to say target equals main, meaning that I am passing this main to my app. Now you're going to notice that all the Flet related functions are going to be inside that main. So we'll be writing functions inside functions when it comes to programming with Flet. Now this one will run as a desktop app. So let me take a look. If I run it, we will get an app like that. It's just loading. It's an empty app, but we have a window that is working. Okay, this is pretty lame right now. I'm gonna raise on this lameness actually, and I'm gonna convert this into a web app. Now if I say here view is equal to ft.web browser like that, now the window that will open will not be a desktop. So if I run it, you'll see that I will get a web app this time, only by changing a very simple parameter in the function. And this is like a web server right now that is running on this IP address, and it is using this port. Okay, so this is a very soft start for Flet. Now we are going to build on that. And welcome back. Let's learn how we can start with an idea of a UI and then simply convert it into a design and a prototype. The first thing you need to do is to actually draw out your user interface so that you can have an idea on the location of the buttons, locations of the images, of the text fields, of the drop downs, etc. So instead of learning this the boring way by just learning how to arrange stuff and etc., how about we put an application in mind and we try to replicate it while we are learning? Okay, so right now I would like to create a to-do list app, meaning that I would like to write what I would like to do and then add them to the app, and it will create a list for me every time I create a new entry. This is a very simple app, but it will teach us a lot of aspects about Flet. First, let's draw it. You can use any drawing app you want. Doesn't really matter. I like to use InVision app. You can use Paint, you can use Photoshop, you can use whatever you want. So you can actually go to this InVision app if you want and sign up. And you can create what I'm about to create right now. So I'm going to go create, and I would like to create a blank freehand. This is actually a free software, and you can use it forever for free. And here we go. Okay, so I'm gonna call this to-do list app. Let's make it really simple. Let's assume that I have my screen that looks like this. This is my desktop screen. I'm gonna be targeting desktop for this application. And I'm going to be creating my window, so this should be my window. I would like it to be something like this. Okay, let's create the frame for that window. Should be something like that, maybe. Let's change the width a little bit and change the opacity a little bit. Okay, so this would be my app right now. Let me move it a bit. So let me zoom in a bit. So here I'm going to be having a text field that will let me add whatever task I want. And then I would like to have a button actually right here. Let me change the opacity a little bit. Okay. So now in this button, I would like to say just add. So I'm going to add a text, say add. This is way too big. Here I will be adding a task. What I want to do next is I'm going to be typing here something. So let us just add a text again. Let's say task 1, whatever it is. Now, whenever I hit on add, I would like to display this task right here. So how can we do that? Now I'm going to be copying this actually. And I'm going to paste them here. So this is my transition. Now, for example, if I say I clicked here, this is what I would like to happen. Let's take a look. So when we click, we need to display that right here. So this here, I'm going to say task 1 that I have already entered, right? How about we add also a check mark? So I'm going to take this, maybe squish it a little bit. Maybe not to this side, maybe to this side. And create a square here that will contain a check mark. So I'm going to take this text, put it in here, and then simply create a square here, very small square, something like that. And this will be my check. So if I complete this task, I would like to be able to click on check. So let me expand this and to do that transition as well. So let me select those, copy and paste. Now here we go. So if I am to click on check, so if I click here, I would like to have a check mark. So maybe in green, something like this. Okay? And we can add as many tasks as we want. So this is my very simple application that I would like to create right now. Let's go to Flet and let's see what we need to learn in order to make this happen. We need to learn about text fields, buttons. We would need to learn how to add a new element dynamically, meaning that I would like to be able to add elements to my window while the program is running. This is a little bit dynamic because we want to add multiple text fields every time we click on add. We need to see how we can design the check mark and how we can arrange these, for example, to be next to each other, how we can arrange these to be on top of each other. So we have multiple techniques to learn to make this happen. So let us get started. Alright, so this is the window we have created earlier. Remember that we said we want a desktop app, so we don't need this view to be web browser anymore. Our goal is to create something like this. So we need a text field and we need a button right here. So let's see how we can do that in Flet. Let's remove this pass and let me simply show you how we can do that. All we need to do is just create a variable. Let's call it text field, for example. And then we will say ft.textField. And that's it. This will create our text field. But if I run this, will I get anything? Let's take a look. As you can see, I got nothing. The app is just loading. The reason is we did not add this new element to the page. What we need to do after we are done creating our widgets, like this text field, for example, we need to add it. To do that, we just need to say page.add. This page is the same one that we have passed here, and we've talked about it. Now I'm just going to say text field. Now if I run this, you'll see that I got a text field and I can type in whatever I want. Okay, how about we create a button? So let's say BT, or let's call this add button, like that. I'm just going to say ft.elevated button, like this. Let's add a text. So text is equal to add. Okay, so this is the text that will be displayed. Now, as usual, we have added the text field. Now let's add the button. So I'm going to say here add btn like this. And here we go. Now we have a button and we have a text field. But as you can see, the arrangement is not really okay because we want this button to be next to the field. Next, the text field is way too long, right? And also, the window itself is not okay. I mean, what I would like to happen is when I open this app, I would like it to be maybe at this size, and this text field may be reaching this area here. So let's see how we can do that. Okay, so we have multiple stuff to do. First, let us define the size of the window. How to do that? Well, we just need to say page.window underscore width. Let's say it's equal to 500. Okay, now let me run this. As you can see now, the window is way shorter in length. It is about 500. The height seems okay, but let's say that we would like to change the height as well. So here we would say page.window underscore height. And let this be something like 900. Let's try it out. Maybe it's too long. Let's make it 700. Yeah, that should be enough. Okay. Now we can also change the background color. All you need to do is just say page.bg color like this, and you can type in any name as a string, any color as a string. So let's say black, just for example. You can see that now the window is black and the text is not really visible right here. But I really don't want black. Let's say maybe white. It's already white. It's the default. But what about if you want colors that are not white or black or those exact colors? The solution is to go to a website called Color Hunt, and it contains those amazing color palettes. And there is code for every color you see here. Let's say that I would like the background to be with this color. All I need to do is press, it will be copied. Now I copied this color, and all we need to do is add a hash like this and paste the color code like this. Now if I run it, you'll see that I got that color as a background. That's really cool. You can choose any color, just plug in its code right here, and you will have an infinite possibilities, amazing possibilities that you can work with. Okay, now what's left is I would like to arrange those two to be next to each other, and I would like to make this a little bit shorter. So let's start with that. I want to make this text field shorter. So to do that, all we need to do is go to the text field and write a property. To tell what are the properties that are supported, just click a comma like this, and you'll get all the properties. We have height, we have width, we have opacity, we have rotation for that box, we have visibility. Flet is really powerful, and you can control everything for every element you have. Initially, all I need is the width. So I'm going to say width is equal to maybe 350. Okay, so if my total width is 500, maybe 350 should be enough. Now, yeah, that sounds okay. Maybe it can be a little bit longer, so maybe 400. Let's take a look. No, actually, I like the 350 more. Okay, now the button will be located here. Next, we'll see how we can arrange those as we want. Right now, arrangement is being stacked. Like every time I add an element, it's just stacked on top of each other. Let's see how we can arrange them in any way we want. So as we said, we would like to arrange those next to each other. To do that, we need to introduce the concept of rows and columns. Now, as you noticed, we need the text field and the button to be on the same row. So how about we create a row and add these two elements to it? I'm going to say here ft.row, like that. Then I'm going to say controls is equal to, and then you need to open a list. Now in this list, you can pass everything you need. So we need to pass first the text field, and next you need to pass the add button. Now, instead of adding to the page every element on its own, you just need to add the row. So let's create a row here. I'm going to call it entries row is equal to this, and now we will be adding this variable to the page. Now if I execute this, now let me close this and let's execute. Here we go. As we can see, we have the add right now next to this. That's really good. Now as you can see, the button is really coming close to the text field. I really don't like this arrangement. So let me explain arrangements a little bit to you. Let's assume that you have 3 elements, okay, because it's easier to explain it with 3 elements. So this is element 1. It's a box. It could be a text box. It could be a button. It could be anything. And this is the second one. And this is the third one, okay? And let's say that this is your row right here. You have a row. You created a row. And those are your elements. Right now, the default value is called start alignment. So this one is called actually start. And as you can see with the start, all the elements are stacked next to each other and it's leaving all of this space empty. So it tries to minimize this space as much as possible. Okay? Now, there is another arrangement that we need to learn, which is called center. So if this is my row, centering would be like this. This is the first element. This would be my second element here, and this would be my third element. And in center, as the name implies, here we have a space or a distance that is equal to the distance right here. Okay, so these are equal to each other because we are in the center, and this is called center. Next, we have something called between. Now, the between looks something like this. If this is here is my row, space between would be something like this. First element would be here. We have an element here. And the middle element would be in the middle. Now, this is called space between. Okay? The space here is equal to the space here. And the elements are on the edge. See here, there is a minimum space at the edges actually. And those are equal. This is a space between. Now we are not done yet. There is more arrangements. Now the next one, if we have a row like this, our arrangement would be something like this. Maybe this is the first element, this is the second element, and this is the third element. Now, as you can see here, the space here is more than here. So we have more space at the inner portion of the rectangle than before. And this is called the space around. So this is a space around, okay? Now, finally, we have one more alignment, which is called the space evenly. So if I put it like that, it's going to try to space everything evenly with the borders, okay? This would be my red, maybe somewhere right here. Now we will leave an even space and create the green. I'm not really sure that I am drawing them correctly, but you got the idea. And this is the yellow. So right now, what's going to happen is this space equals this space equals this space, and it equals this space. Okay? And this is what we call space evenly. Okay? Now those are the arrangements that you need to work with. You have around 5 arrangements that you can choose between to make your app look the way you want. Now let's see how we can use those in reality. Now you need to come to the row right here and pass another argument. So here you have passed text field, you have passed add button, but we need to pass something called alignment. And this alignment is going to equal to ft dot main axis alignment, okay? And then you need to pass the name to it. So initially it's a start, as I said. As you can see here, here's all of your options: space around, space between, space evenly. Maybe let's try the space between. So I'm gonna say here space between like this, and this will be it. Let me just put them next to each other like this. This is better visually. I'm closing the app and rerunning. As you can see now, the space here is much better. Now the first element is going way to the left and the next element is going way to the right, next to the border. And this is way better visually, okay? Now if you have more elements, you can use any keyword that I gave you. You can, instead of space between, you can say start or center. Or you can use around or space evenly. Actually, it just came to my mind, there is one more which is called end. It's very similar to this topology, but all the elements will be to the far right. So this would be called end instead of start, okay? And that's it. This is how we do arrangements. Now, what I told you here is applicable to columns as well, because we can, the same way we created a row, we can create a column and we can just do these same arrangements. Alright, so right now we have our text field, we have our button in one row. Let's take a look at our design one more time. So we need this checkbox and we need this text. Flet supports checkbox natively. It means that you can create a checkbox and you can change its value to true and false. And this task here is nothing but a text, right? So this is a text field and this should be a text that cannot be edited. So how can we do that? Well, I'm not gonna start adding tasks dynamically. I just want to show you how we can create a checkbox and a text next to it. Then we will see how we can make it dynamic by only adding text when we press on add. So I'm gonna say checkbox is equal to ft.checkbox like this. And the value will be initially, let's say true, meaning that the box should be checked. Next, I need the text. So I'm gonna say checkbox text, okay, and here we are going to say ft.text. This will create a text, okay, and the value here is going to be maybe task1, like that. Now let me separate those. How about we put those in one row? It makes sense, right? We have the checkbox on the left and we have the text on the right. So right here I'm gonna say task row is equal to the same thing, ft.row. Then we need controls is equal to, let's pass all of our elements. So what are my elements here? Well, I have the checkbox. This will be on the left. And we have the checkbox text. So we have checkbox text like this. And we need the same alignment, right? So let's pass the alignment as well. I'm going to put a comma after the controls and just pass the alignment like that. Okay, Now all we need to do is add this new row. So I'm going to say here task row like that. Now before we compile, let's see the warning here. Okay. Oh, we need a comma, not a dot. All right, now let's run it. And here we go. As you can see, we have the task here and the check over there. But the alignment is really ugly right now. Maybe here instead of the space between, we need start. Okay, this is much better. But as you can see, we don't have a background. So how about we create a rectangle just around that text? Let's see if we can do that. If we go to the box text here and we choose width, and let's make it 350, and let's choose a background color as well. So we have background color, let's make it, I don't know, white maybe? It could be anything. We are just testing things out right now. Okay, let's delete this column. And here we go. Now we have a background around it. We can actually change the font size as well. So let's say your size is equal to maybe 24. As you can see now, the text size is larger. It's maybe too large. Let's make it, I don't know, 15. Well, this is much better. Okay. So far, this is how our app is looking like. How about we start adding tasks dynamically? Now, how about we add those dynamically? To do that, we need to create a function. And as I said before, all the functions related to Flet need to be defined inside this main, okay? So that they can utilize this page right here and everything can be passed in between each other. All right, so I'm going to say here def, and the function is called add task. And I need to pass a very small parameters. Let's call it p, like this. Okay, now, how can we add task? What is the task that need to be added? Well, we need to take those lines, put them here, but the value here needs to be false initially for the checkbox, because initially the checkbox is not checked, right? Let's use the intended block here. Okay. And the value here need to be changing according to what we type in the text field. So this is my text field here. That is my text field. Now what I would like to do is I would like to take the value out of that text field and just assign it here. But how would we do that? Because this text field is actually an object. And since this is an object, we can access it as object variables, right? How can we do that? I'm going to delete this and I'm going to say here text field dot value. Okay. Now to this function, those are nothing but global variables that can be accessed. How are we going to link clicking on add with adding new entries or adding new tasks? If we go back to the button right here, I can define an argument that is called onClick, meaning that whenever I click, I'm going to be executing a function, and this function is going to be this add task. So whenever I am pressing this add button, a callback is going to be triggered, and this add task will be executed. So I'm going to say here add task. Okay, so this is how we add the task. Now, we're not done with this yet. I'm going to convert it to a row, then I will be adding it to the page. I'm going to just cut that. So right here, we have already done this. I'm going to put it here. We have converted those two into one row. Now I'm going to just add the row that contains the checkbox and the text. How can we add that? Well, we're just going to say page.add, the same as before, task row, and I'm going to delete this here. Okay, let me recap. We have a button. We click it. This one will be triggered. We're going to create a checkbox object with a false default value and a checkbox text that will take whatever we have typed here. And then we are creating a row out of them because we want them next to each other. This is why we are creating a row. And then we are adding it to the page. And that's it. Now let's try to execute this. Now, if I type here, my first task, if I click on add, you'll see that now I have my first task. Let's continue. Let's say my second task. If I click here, I'm gonna get my second task as well. So far, so good. We are able now to add entries dynamically and we can check them and uncheck them. Okay, but we are still building the skeleton of that user interface. So far, it actually looks really ugly with those colors, with those backgrounds like that. This needs to be fixed. But first, let's finish up with the skeleton of our user interface. Okay, so let's make this app a little bit nicer looking. Initially, I'm going to change this color back to white. Okay, the default one. So here we have white. And if I execute this, I would also like to change this button. Now, this is the elevation button. How about we change this into some icon instead of just this plain boring add? Well, we can simply do that by using floating action buttons. So instead of elevated button here, I can use floating action button. And here I would like to pass icon, and this icon is going to be ft.icons. Let's say add, like that. Now if I execute this, okay, here it needs to be icons. Now let me execute again. Here we go. Now we have this nice looking thing right here. Let's add a task. Let's say task 1. You'll see that I have task 1. Okay.